So today I'm going to speak about speech language and communication and social communication needs. I chose to talk about this partly because at the moment I'm delivering a series of lectures on this for a module that I'm lecturing on the special needs programme. So the reason I'm thinking about it is because in preparing for the lectures and delivering the lectures, it's reminded me of just how many other aspects of special needs are affected by issues with social language, speech language, social communication needs. One of the things that can happen is when somebody has speech language and communication needs, it can impact on their behaviour. This can be for different reasons. It could just be the simple frustration of just not getting your point across and not understanding what's going on, and it's just sort of like the frustration just gets to you, and then you might lash out. There might be actual that sort of behaviour, or the behaviour issues could be misunderstandings. So young children playing a game of it, they know that the game stopped, but the child who's slower in processing this information might not realise the game's over and tags someone and then gets told off for hitting them. So for various reasons it can have a strong and lasting impact on the child's behaviour and the behaviour of those around the child as they see the behaviour as slightly different of the child who's got these needs. So behaviour is one area that can be seriously affected, and now with the special needs codes of practice, rather than looking at behaviour as an area of need, that comes under sort of emotional and mental health issues and things like that. So there's an understanding that when there's poor behaviour in a child, usually there's an underlying reason for that. And so speech language and social communication needs are quite often the underlying reason, one of the underlying reasons for it. Another thing it affects is word retrieval, and I've spoken about that before. As somebody who has dyslexia, word retrieval is often an issue for me, and it could be that you need a prompt. So you sort of go, and you're not really stuttering or stammering or anything like that. You're just buying time to think of the right word, and sometimes the wrong word comes up, but it's a word that's similar in meaning. So you might say, I need the sieve, and when you mean the colander. So you've found one in the same family but not quite the right word. Or you might go into an explanation. You might say, I need something for straining the vegetables, because you can't find the word colander, so you use an explanation instead. So it can be about finding the right word. I get picked up by one of my sons on this quite often, because I'll say a word which is close in meaning to what I mean to say, and my son, who is very exacting with language and very good at this, and he will say, oh, so you're saying such and such, and I'm thinking, no, I'm not saying that. And it will be because I've actually come up with a close word but not an exact word, and that's actually given a slightly different meaning to what I'm trying to say. It can also be the sort of malapropism where I've spoken before about saying park arc instead of car park, which I always say very slowly to get correct. So a lot of these, and it can also be about having made an association with the word but hung it on the wrong peg. So for example, when one of our children was little, we used to go to into Camberley, and there was a level crossing, and as we got there, the level crossing was right at the station, and if the barriers were down, I'd go, oh look, we're at the station, the train's coming in, and I assumed the meaning that I had attached. We're at the station, we are. But what my son was seeing were the barriers either going down or coming up. So he was fixing the word station to the object of barriers. So we went into a car park, and he said, oh look, station. I'm thinking, it's not a station, it's a car park. And eventually I clocked that he was looking at the barrier, and I had to explain, oh no, that's called barrier. Now in normal speech and language and communication development, that misunderstanding can simply be remedied. Somebody who has a speech language communication, social communication need may need a lot more training to unlearn an incorrect association and learn the correct one. So it can be about association. The thing I said about car park, a lot of children say things like biscotti, where it's what we call phonological. They're getting the sound slightly wrong. They're either mishearing them or putting them in the wrong order. Again, this is something which, if as parents, when a child says, "Oh, can I have biscotti?" instead of repeating it and thinking, "Oh, that's cute, let's go for, we'll call it biscotti in this house." If you go, "Yes, of course you can have spaghetti," that child will learn the word spaghetti. However, if the child has a natural speech language communication need, an area of difficulty there, they will need a lot more coaching and teaching of that. Another thing is, in normal development, you get things like children will say, "Oh, she teached me about that," instead of "she taught." And what's happening is the child has learned, sort of as part of their natural development of language acquisition, the regular past form of adding the ed, the d, t, id sound to the end of a word. And so they'll say, "Oh, she teached me that today," thinking they're being very good because they've picked it up. And then it's about saying, "Oh, so she taught you what? What did she teach you? She taught you to do this, did she?" And we reinforce the correct version, and gradually the child with normal development will pick up these irregular past tenses, or these irregular aspects of language, whatever they are. If a child has a need, these are going to need much more targeted teaching. So another thing is the pragmatics of it, so how we use language in a social context. Now, one of the things we do a lot in English is we use idioms. So we might say, "Oh, that's written all over your face." So a child who's got difficulties with the non-literal, the inferred meaning of language, would be sort of really quite panicky. What's written on my face? Have I got writing on my face? Where's the writing? So, they've taken it literally and can't work out the implied meaning or the known meaning. And a lot, again, children in their normal development will pick up these idioms and be confused by them, but they'll soon learn the social context and pick it up and start to use them themselves. A child with a difficulty in this area will need a lot of support teaching idioms, idiomatic language. Some of these traits, so that for those traits, they're very typical in a child with autism, quite often with attachment issues. Now, the autism is not a speech language communication need, but there can be overlap. So we need to pick out what is the main area of need, what is a secondary area of need, and we need to address the needs. Let's be honest about it, the needs need addressing. So with somebody who's got this pragmatic issue, if we turn around and say, "There's some paper under your desk," the child is likely to look and go, "Yes, there is." They're not going to make that immediate connection. "Oh, you want me to pick up the paper and put it in the bin or put it back on my desk or whatever," because they're just hearing a statement of fact. There was one I was told yesterday by one of my students who said the teacher told the child, "You're writing on your pencil case." And the child is thinking, "Yes, I am. Well done, good observation." No concept that they're being told off. And then when the teacher then gets more cross, "You haven't stopped writing on your pencil case." Well, no, nobody told me to stop writing on my pencil case. So speech, language and communication and social communication needs are huge. The aspects of it, the word retrieval can affect dyslexics, it can affect dyspraxics, it can affect people with ADHD, it can affect people with on the autistic spectrum. So all these things, different aspects of speech language communication need can affect people with other learning difficulties. So the more we can learn about speech language and communication needs, the better. One of the things we can do is learning something called Makaton, which is, it's taken signs from British Sign Language and it looks at ways of not totally speaking, British Sign Language is a language of its own in its own right. I feel very strongly it should be taught in schools. It has its own grammatical structures, its own syntax. It's a language in its own right. However, generously, BSL have given signs of theirs to Makaton. And Makaton is used, rather than as a complete sign language, it's used to support, so it's used to help speech development. So, well, help is one of the signs they use. Hello, goodbye, good morning, toilet, sorry. There's quite a few aspects of BSL that are used in Makaton. We can use them as teachers in the classroom, you know, look, listen, you know, to reinforce the key words of what we're saying to children. That will not only help the children who've got speech, language, communication, social communication needs, but it will help any other child. It won't hinder anyone. It's another form of listening. It helps to listen more actively because you can hear it, but you can also see it. So you are getting the language, the important message reinforced. So, you know, help, important word, is being, you know, sorry, toilet, very important one when you're teaching, especially in primary school. These things really do support the way we help children to know what we're saying and develop their language. But speech, language, communication, social communication needs is an area that needs a lot more support. We need a lot more speech and language therapists. We are desperately short of those. And we need to be aware that when a child gets something wrong, it may not be that they are deliberately being naughty, but there may be an issue that needs our help. Thank you. Thank you.